大家好，我叫陈新宇，在奔萨国立大学学习俄语。我们在课堂上经常讨论俄罗斯传统文化、语言等方面的问题，而在其中一节课堂上，我惊讶地发现，俄罗斯人的衣服具有民族特色，腰带是一种护身符或者吉祥物的表示。腰带可以保护人们，给他们带来力量，在我们国家没有其他的含义的是。但在俄罗斯，皮带的象征亦与我国的五帝钱的含义是一样的，由此我很想从大师们那里学习有关这方面的知识。
The belt is one of the most intimate types of decoration or amulets. This is a must-have item for Russian folk clothing, separating the upper and lower parts of a person's body, tying the upper and lower parts of the garment. The belt hereby simultaneously separates and binds the higher and lower aspects in a person. In addition, the belt takes a significant part of the weight of the garment on itself, relieving the shoulders from additional load. It is always in all Slavic Aryan peoples is perceived as a sign of prosperity and decency. For example, earlier women of dubious behavior, for example, getters or dancers, were forbidden to wear belts. Ancient Slavs and Romans were allowed to unbelt themselves only on special occasions, when someone was buried or on religious holidays. Belts are of great importance in the ritual life of the Russian people. At the wedding, the spouses give belts to each other, relatives and guests twist the newborn with the belt, tie the first wheat sheaf, put the deceased, seeing him off on his last journey, tie them on birches and sprouts when parting, and confess their love with presenting a belt. A person can be without a belt for some time only. For example, a newborn, a woman giving birth, seriously ill or dying person. The belt must be removed during fortune-telling, as if opening the gates for communication with the world of Navi. But a person can only be without a belt at home, in the circle of those closest to him, or during some ritual actions. The belt always has a protective and symbolic purpose. By the belt, people could get much necessary information. From what region was the person, what kind of person he was, his social and marital status. Belts for men and women, for children and youth, adults and seniors were clearly distinguished. There are everyday, festive, and ceremonial and ritual belts. Everyday belts for children under 3 or 4 years old are most often made of twisted ropes. They are made by mothers, grandmothers, aunts, or older sisters. It is favorable for a girl to wear a female belt made by her mother, but she must also have a male belt made by her father. This is due to the fact that the belt covers and protects the hara, one of the main energy centers of the person called solar plexus. It helps a child in the age before 12, which is the conditional age of puberty, to balance the use of his yang and yin energies. The belt created by the hands of a man nourishes the growing, maturing child with the vital creative power, protecting and preserving him. Casual, woven and braided flat belts usually end with a fringe, while everyday twisted and round braided belts usually end in a single tassel. Festive belts in all social classes have always been branded with special patterns, and they are always multicolored. Festive men belt sachets are 7 centimeters wide. Women usually did not wear them. Women's festive belts are less wide, up to 3 or 5 centimeters wide. Festive sachets or cummerbunds necessarily had their patterned patrimonial charms and were decorated with many tassels and pendants, sometimes with expensive stones, silver, and metal pendants. Moreover, a different number of brushes are made on men's and women's belts. For example, on many men's sachets, 7 or 9 stones or pendants are placed. On the women's festive belt, only 8 brushes are usually made. Festive belts differ from everyday belts in multicolor, sophistication of weaving, and semantic complexity of patterns, as well as in width and length. Their length allows the belt to be wrapped around the body 2 or 3 times. Particularly beautiful are the wedding belts of the newlyweds, which can be called ceremonial belts. They are kept all their life as a talisman and passed on by inheritance. The tassels of wedding sashes would be decorated with bells, semi-precious and silver pendants. All holiday belts are usually inherited. If the fate of the previous owner was happy, children and grandchildren continue to carry them. In other cases, they can be kept as a memory and used for ancestor commemoration ceremonies. Ritual belts can vary, twisted, woven, braided, depending on the purpose. They are made by each person for himself at a certain time and with certain spells or prayers. Such belts are not given to the strangers, and they are hidden from other people and from their prying eyes in order to preserve the clean energy of the prayed belt. They are stored rolled up in special wooden chests along with ritual clothing and are not inherited. Ritual belts as well as ritual clothing after the death of the person go with him to another world. For example, even now it is believed that a belt made and presented by a wife to her husband protects him from a bad eye, slander, and all sorts of troubles and misfortunes. It increases his masculine strength, protects his health and his virtue. People say that a belt made by a woman with special love can even ward off a bullet from a man or protect them from death from a weapon. Any man can be proud of such a gift. Good day, my name is Svetlana Malcianova and I am the head of the Center of Folk Doll, the Bird of Joy. In our school we do not only craft amulet dolls, but we study the crafts which existed on the territory of Russia. Our country is rich in various nationalities. They all possess traditional crafts. Each nation had its own special costume. Women made their own clothes at home. This applies to ethnography. Today we will hold a weaving master-class. Weaving is the oldest craft. The oldest woven thread that has survived to this day was found on the territory of Georgia and dates back many centuries before Christ. The most ancient piece of fabric found on the territory of modern Turkey is dated 6th century before Christ. The fabric was of plant origin, such as linen or hemp, mostly linen fabric. There were woolen fabrics too. Weaving is manufacturing of any sort of fabric. A different type of belt were made in the technique of weaving. White sachet, which were characteristic for the 19th century. There were a great number of methods of weaving the fabric. I can now name at least 3 main techniques. For example, weaving on special small wooden frames. Another type of weaving is weaving on the mechanical machine tool called the loop. It was very popular in the 19th century. Most fabrics were made by this method. And one more type is weaving on the specialized frame called berdol. It's a simple wooden frame which has 2 rows of slits. We'll practice this technique today. To start work, you need to first show in the thread. It is done by such metal loop applicator. It goes without saying that we first need to envision the composition of our work in our mind. We could draw it on the paper too. Then we take a thread and with the help of the loop applicator insert the thread in the main slit of berdol frame. The second thread we insert in the neighboring slit. And then one by one we insert all the threads accordingly to our design planning. Now there are many equipments helping to facilitate the process of weaving. We take the easiest way of weaving the woolen threads. When we have all threads inserted, we straighten them and stretch the threads. Usually, the length of the belt or girdle is much longer than we have today. We make one big knot at one end. And then fix it to some stationary stand or element. The second end we tie to ourselves. The process of weaving is just moving the berdol frame up and down. As we move it up, the threads are split in 2 bundles. In the space between them, we run the weaving shuttle. and pull up the frame towards ourselves to tighten the threads. Then we put the frame down and repeat the actions, run the shuttle, tighten the threads. We have a very simple type of weaving. As a matter of fact, many belts were done in this technique. It was easy and fast to manufacture. However, if the master wanted to weave the festive belt, the technique was more sophisticated and complex. This work requires just several hours to be completed. The life of people in ancient times in villages was hard and difficult. The women did their craft work usually in the evening or in winter time, when the crop works were finished. Then they were weaving, knitting, and doing other works. They put their ideas, energy, and will in the belts, putting special patterns, sometimes spells and prayers. It was important to have only good thoughts and intentions while working. The life of peasant was very much depending on natural forces. They believed in different spirits of nature. Они считали, что все вокруг полно всякими духами, духами травы, духами воды, земли, конечно. And they also believed in 5 elements. Понятием. И как бы это тоже может перекликаться с другими культурами, например, там в китайских, в которой есть. They believed the belts were protecting people. В нашей крестьянской среде считалось, что эти духи летают повсюду и как бы могут человеку как принести вред, так и поспособствовать его благополучной жизни. Moreover, on some belts, craftswomen also wove the words of prayer. You literally could read them.
Эти пояса, конечно, носились не снаружи, а либо на теле, либо на внутреннем платье на каком-то, чтобы их не было видно. Символы все разные, да, но опять же надо различать то, что, допустим, бабушки, как это все называли, там козлики, рожки, кресты, коники, да, и...
There were different symbols, and the masters formed it from knots. Vertically and horizontally, and it was always in squares only and never in circles. So just the technique did not allow to make the circle patterns, only the squares. And the designs and patterns are numerous.
В качестве есть какая-то символика, которую еще описывал академик Борис.
The scientists even tried to decipher the symbolic language of weaving.
Много ученых, которые над этой темой работают и структурируют все вот эти символы.
They structured and classified the patterns.
Система, что, очень общо, что есть, допустим, символ засеянного поля сейчас.
So, for example, the symbol of the field is the rhombus with lines on sides. This side can be worn by a woman only and never by a child. Dots, for example, symbolize rain or seeds. The lines symbolize water.
The horizontal line denotes the earth. There are many signs for animals and birds. The birds stand for sky and air. The deer signs stand for earth and protection. The symbol of a woman giving birth is a vertical rhombus with so-called hands raised up or bent down. These stand for the spring or autumn. At her sides, there are always placed two horses, two warriors, or two deer. They protect the woman. The basic symbol of weaving technique is a solar pattern. This is the oblique cross. Добро в плане не моральном, а, естественно, материальном, потому что им могли клеймить таким символом, скотину, быков, например. Это означало, что это добро, и это... This is the symbol of sunshine and wealth. Thanks to the sun, we only have our planet and life on it.
Было бы календарного цикла, к которому привязан крестьянский быт, не было бы ни урожая, ни плодородия, ни, собственно, не было бы даже самой жизни. Сейчас мы поменяли пояс немножко, здесь уже заправленный пояс, и мы будем...
Now we change the artwork. We will try to weave the figure on the artwork. The figures can be of various shapes. This technique is called selection method. We choose the needed color threads.
Техника называется методом перебора, по-другому бранная техника, но больше, наверное, подходит методом перебора.
And not to be confused in the shaping of the designs, we have special schemes or so-called templates.
Одна узорная нить, две нити фоновые. Узорная нить у нас в данном случае красная. Для того, чтобы не запутаться в узоре, у нас есть различные схемки, которые, это называется раппорт, которые показывают, как нам нужно перебирать эти ниточки. Вот сейчас попробуем воспроизвести. Это более сложные такие пояса, красивые очень. Они могут быть и широкими. У нас узор сейчас будет вот.
They show how we need to choose the threads. It is more complex, but the results are very beautiful.
Правда, другой техники пояса делается на дощечках. Мы начинаем перебирать нитки. Допустим, я сейчас начну узор, тут немножко точно так же поднимаем бердо. Ниточки у нас одни поднимаются, одни опускаются. Подбиваем ножом и начинаем перебирать. Часть ниток опускаем узорных, а одно оставляем. У нас получается начало узора.
The foreigners may like to learn weaving as culture study of folk costume. The folk dress is not as simple. It has its language and meaning. Not like jeans today. Ancient people knew all about a person judging by their costume.
Как бы становится ясно, из своей деревни ты или из чужой. Значит, как я к тебе буду относиться, как к своему родному, или все-таки с осторожностью. И поэтому...
And the belt was very important too. Learning the foreign culture, you find common traits with your culture.
Это вписано в мировоззрение народное.
And you will finally realize that the traditional cultures of different countries are united in their roots.
В своей основе фактически едины, у них один и тот же корень, потому что ремесла одинаковые, все украшали свою одежду, все делали, ткали полотно, у всех приблизительно одинаковое строение тела, соответственно, даже владение оружием, которое могло бы быть разное, но владение оружием у всех одинаковое, поэтому к другому телу не двигается, поэтому культура...
For example, silk weaving in China. They used a very complex equipment for sophisticated fabrics. And they put their magnificent designs on them, such as birds, lions, and dragon patterns on the fabric. It is very interesting but very difficult. Returning to the importance of the belt in the folk culture, I can say that there were many proverbs saying about the importance of the belts for people. And as we know, the proverbs hold the people's wisdom and life experience. One of the proverbs says, "The person has loosened his belt," which meant that a man broke the social conduct frames. Another thing about the belt is that it somehow pulls us together in a unique structure, gives us shape, and makes us complete. People always wore belts or girdles. The man could not go anywhere without the cap or the belt.
Ну вот, здравствуйте.
Здравствуйте.
Мы с вами сейчас попробуем провести мастер-класс по качество на бердо. Вот смотрите, мы к вам привязали пояс, чтобы он зафиксирован был. Ну, такая технология, так положено. И дальше мы вот сейчас будем изучать, как сделать, как его соткать. Мы поднимаем бердо. У нас ниточки, которые в дырочках, они поднялись вверх. И получился вот этот зев. В этот зев нам нужно проложить челнок с ниткой. Оп, туда проложили, держите. Сейчас сами попробуйте. Подбили ниточку, поменяли зев. Так вот провели, чтобы нитки освободились. Распутали их, подбили ниточку и снова прокладываем челнок в ту сторону. А теперь попробуйте.
Хорошо.
Да, сейчас, минуту. Сейчас. Вот так, да. Угу. Можно все класть на стол, тут ничего никуда не убежит, не сломается, не разорвется. Не бойтесь. Угу, правильно. Теперь нам нужно, видимо, поднять наверх. Мы вот так проводим, чтобы нитки расправились. Подбивайте линейкой. Линейкой сначала. Угу. А потом челноком проходите. Вот мы немножко соткали, смотри, сколько ты уже успел сделать. Это достаточно много. Как тебе, сложно было или легко?
Я думаю, нормально.
Нормально.
Как вот это, я думаю, трудно. Еще, вот так. Очень легко.
Понравилось хотя бы?
Понравилось.
Хорошо.
Интересно очень.
Интересно. Ну, это радует.